Well, it's so great having you both here. And I just mentioned all of those amazing courses and ministries that you run all around the world. And to begin with, could you just tell us why you wrote them in the first place?
Well, let me just say before I answer that question, it's not half so exciting as it is for us to be here again with you. We were here 6 months ago. It is fantastic to be back. The reason that we developed these courses is because we saw the need. We saw the need to help engaged couples, to prepare for marriage, to help married couples, those once they are married. And we saw that marriage and family life are under more pressure today. And these courses, really, they're just practical tools. And our encouragement at home in HTBB is just for every engaged couple to do the marriage prep course, every married couple to do the marriage course, parents to do the parenting courses. And then we saw actually how then these courses, because they're very practical, they apply to people outside of the church. People started inviting their friends. So now it's been an amazing way to support family life in the church and outside in the community. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to the mysteries of the Christingle, explain what that is about if you've never heard of it or seen one. Sila and I have become aware as the marriage course spreads, we sort of need to be aware that sometimes people might know more about us than we know about them. And not long ago, Sila and I were on the Underground in London. And we were sitting down, it's quite a crowded train, having a very heated discussion. I think you'd call it an argument, really. I can't remember what it was about. All I do remember was Sila was speaking very passionately, and I thought rather loudly about her point of view. Anyway, just before we got to our stop, there was a man who was standing about sort of 5 feet or so away from us, and just before he got off at his stop, the one before ours, he looked at us and said, "You're Nicky and Sila Lee, aren't you?" And he said, "I'm doing the marriage course with my wife out in West London." At which point our hearts sank. So now if we have a disagreement in public, we make sure we speak in very low tones, keep a fixed smile on our faces at all costs. And I have to say, I'm still getting used to the idea of Christmas in 33 degrees and snow. I think producing snow is almost synonymous with manna in the wilderness. It's amazing. This morning, the title of our talk is At Home with Jesus. And we want to talk about what a Christian home looks like and what God intends for your home and for our home. And this is the case whether you are married, whether you're single, whether or not you have children. At the end of the service, the children are going to come in with their Christingles. And if you've never seen a Christingle, this is a Christingle orange. And Christingle means Christ light. It started in the Moravian church back in the 1740s. And they would use this as symbolic that they were Christians. Christ was in their lives, in their homes. And actually, they would light these Christingle oranges, as we're going to do later. And they would put them in their windows so that the light of Christ would shine out of their home into the darkness, that passers-by would be attracted by the light. You may remember John wrote in his gospel, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." I loved it that the family who were leading the prayers this morning, the mother, talked about Jesus taking the darkness out of her heart and filling her heart with his light, with his joy, with his peace. And the darkness is really all the bad stuff in the world, the bad stuff we've done and the bad stuff that's been done to us. And it's the darkness that robs us of life, robs us of joy, spoils our relationships. Perhaps the darkest hour of all was the days just after Jesus had been crucified, when he was dead and, as far as his disciples were concerned, buried. And it looked like the darkness had overcome the light. And I want us to read in a moment this passage from Luke chapter 24. It's the story of when there are two disciples who are two of Jesus' disciples, most likely a married couple, who after the cross on Friday, they are just devastated. They're confused. They're bereaved of their best friend has died. And now they are going home, confused about what has happened. All of their hopes and expectations turn to disappointment and disillusionment. And then it's what happened in their home that changed everything. It was total transformation. These two, this couple, were never the same again. And it's what happens in your home that can change everything for many, many people. And in this reading, it's set on the Sunday, the day of Jesus' resurrection. And this couple are walking home from Jerusalem to Emmaus. It's 7 miles, it'll be about a 2.5 hour walk. And even though they have heard some rumors that Jesus' body was missing, and they've heard a story of women having a vision of angels saying that Jesus was alive, this couple had no expectation at all that Jesus would rise from the dead, so they didn't believe these rumors. And I'm going to start at Luke 24, verse 13. Now, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened there in these last days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. But the chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it's the third day since all this took place." Then on to verse 25. Jesus said to them, "How foolish you are. How slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them all that was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. What a Bible study that must have been. Can you imagine? Even beating Miles's very best sermon here, Jesus explaining how all of the Old Testament points to him, to the cross, what he came to do. Then verse 28. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it's nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It's true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. We want to look at 3 things that this couple did. 3 actions that made this ordinary home in Emmaus extraordinary. 3 things that can make your home, make our home extraordinary too. To help you remember these 3 things, these 3 actions, it's only 3 words that you need to remember. And the words are pray, love, eat. You may know there's a film that's got roughly that title, though the words are in a different order. I don't want you to get confused with that, all right? The three words are, say it together with me, pray, love, eat. The first action was this. They invited Jesus to stay with them. Remember, as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued as if he were going further. But they urged him strongly, stay with us, for it's nearly evening. The day is almost over. So he went in to stay with them. Now, of course, at this stage, they didn't know that it was Jesus. But isn't this amazing? The Son of God himself, who has come to earth, who has died on the cross for this couple, Cleopas and his wife. He's conquered death for them. He waits to be invited into their home. He made as if he were going further. He waits for them to invite him in. And then Luke says that whenever Jesus is invited in, he comes. And just as in that verse, right at the end of the Bible, in Revelation 3:20, where Jesus stands, as it were, at the door of our lives, and he says, here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, Jesus says, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. When Jesus is invited, he comes in. And when Jesus is in the house, things happen. And this couple completely transformed. And actually, they literally turn around 180 degrees. This road that they've been tramping up in utter desolation, now they turn around. They go back in the opposite direction, full of excitement, full of joy. And their disillusionment now has changed to new hope. They have an absolute assurance that Jesus is alive. He's with them and they can't wait to tell others. I remember at HTBB, our church in London, many years ago, a young woman from an Indian family, a Hindu background. Her name was Kiran, and she came on Alpha, and she gave her life to Christ. And then on the next course, her brother, called Aaron, came on Alpha. He gave his life to Christ. And then I remember on the next course, there was a woman who was dressed in a sari, a spot on her forehead, and she was there. And I remember meeting her just when she arrived, and I said, why have you come to Alpha? And this was her reply. She said, my son Aaron has been unhappy for so long, and I heard him laugh for the first time in years. And I want to thank Jesus from the bottom of my heart. And she too, the mother was called Bina. She then gave her life to Christ. This couple, in Luke 24, strongly urged Jesus to stay with them. The first action is pray. If you've never done this before, invite Jesus to come into your life by his Spirit. Open the door. I'm going to give you an opportunity to do just that later on in this service. And then ask him every day to fill your home with his presence. And extraordinary things will happen.
It's always such a relief every time I read that story that Mr. and Mrs. Cleopas invited the stranger in. Imagine if they hadn't. Imagine it would have been very different. But they did. The second action that made this ordinary home in Luke 24 extraordinary was that they practiced hospitality. They didn't know this was Jesus. They were inviting a stranger into their home. And they urged him to stay. And it was a stranger, but they urged him to stay. Now, when we as Christians invite others into our home, people encounter Jesus. I want to tell you a story about a couple here at HTBB. Many of whom you will know this couple. They are Tim Key and Chi Chow. We've known Tim Key and Chi Chow for many years now. And they are a couple who practice hospitality in the most remarkable way. And they used to be our secret weapon at HTB in London. They are now your secret weapon. Every year in July at our church, we take a week away, and with the church, the whole of the church and our church plants, we go to a week we call Focus. Now, there are thousands of people who come to Focus, and we all live in caravans or in tents beside the sea for a week. Now, Tim Key and Chi Chow for many years have hosted hundreds, literally hundreds, probably thousands, of people in their caravan. They cook wonderful mountains of Malaysian food so that the Asians who come to Focus can actually survive. Otherwise, I think they wouldn't survive. One year, a Malaysian woman who was a very tentative new Christian came to Focus. Now, this woman couldn't believe the welcome that she received from Tim Key and Chi Chow every day as she squeezed into their caravan for lunch and dinner. And she said, they knew nothing about me. I was a complete stranger to them. And then one evening during Focus, she had a vision. And she had a vision of hearts raining down with Tim Key and Chi Chow's face behind these hearts raining down. And she went and found Chi Chow, and she said to Chi Chow, I have felt so much love during this week, but I'm not sure I know what's happening. And Chi Chow talked with her, explained to her that this is the love of Jesus. And at the end of that week, this woman was baptized in the freezing English Sea, which I think was quite an ordeal for a Malaysian woman. But she said that even though my natural family weren't there, I was surrounded by my new family. That woman is now also a member of HTBB. Things happen when Jesus is in the house and when we invite people into our home. God wants to use your home. Whether you're single or married, as Nicky has said, whether you have the smallest flat or a large house, whether you have student accommodation or a corporate apartment, or even a caravan at Focus. Now, there are a number of people here at HTBB who are hosting a Connect group in their home. And every time those Connect groups meet in a home and gather together, things happen because they are practicing hospitality. And as we practice hospitality, Jesus is right there. There's a young single woman at our church in London who comes to a Connect group in a home in London. And this is what she said to us. Connect group for me is the difference between loneliness and a sense of belonging. The group is full of people that I would never otherwise get to meet. And often, if I'm honest, people I might never otherwise hang out with. But they all teach me, challenge me, and help me grow. They've become like an extended family to me in London. We meet in the home of one very generous member, and it's the highlight of my fortnight to go there. Be welcomed and learn from such inspiring people about how to do life well. Jesus says, where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them. That's what happens every time a Connect group meets here at HTBB in someone's home. It's happening when a married couple here at HTB invites an engaged couple on from the marriage preparation course. They may well be strangers. They may not be churchgoers, but the Christian couple invite them into their home. It happens when people run the parenting courses in their home and they invite their neighbors. Nicky and I as Miles has said, we have the privilege, and it's an amazing privilege, to meet many people around the world who are using their homes. Christians around the world opening their homes. And we've got one friend who is an Italian Roman Catholic priest. His name is Don Renzo Benetti. And he has trained over 400 Italian couples to run the marriage course in their homes all over Italy. And these Christian couples invite their neighbors, their friends, those in their community to do the marriage course with them in their homes. And many of these guest couples who come into the homes of these Christian couples to do the marriage course have come to know Jesus as a result. And Don Renzo describes what's happening like this. The home is the place where in ordinary life, the word of love becomes flesh again. Now, of course, hospitality always costs us something. And I don't mean just financially. You know, when we open our home to others, people come in. They invade our space. They make a mess. Things may get broken. When we're preparing a meal, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes planning, it takes shopping, it takes preparing. I can't think how much food Tim Key and Chi Chow must have prepared. It is costly. But this is what love is about. The call on our lives is to be hospitable because of God's hospitality to us. As we practice hospitality, people encounter the love of Jesus. Pray, love, eat. The third action was they ate together. Now, verse 30 of chapter 24 says, when he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. William Barclay writes, it was at an ordinary meal in an ordinary house when an ordinary loaf was being divided that this couple recognized Jesus. It's not only at the communion table we can be with Christ. We can be with him at the dinner table too. He's not only the host in his church, he is the guest in every home. Such a special and important part of practicing hospitality is sharing a meal with someone, eating together with them in their home. It's really significant that Jesus says in that verse in Revelation, I will come in and eat with them and they with me. And I don't know if you know this, but the word companionship comes from the Latin. And the literal meaning is taking bread together. And of course, eating a meal together builds friendship. Nicky and I, as we said at the beginning, we love being here in KL. Last night, we were invited by a couple here in HTBB to go and share dinner with them in their home. How special is that? We're in a strange city, thousands of miles from our friends and our family, and we were invited by a couple to go to their home and to share a meal, to sit around their table and to make friends and to meet people we didn't know. And we experienced the love and the blessing and the presence of Jesus. As Christians, we rightly place a high value on eating together with others in our homes. Now, we know that almost everything you do here at HTBB involves food. It involves a meal. I know you all love eating and love meals, and that's wonderful. Alpha, the marriage course. I can't believe how beautiful the marriage course looks here. I'd love to come and do the marriage course here. Get all your friends to come and do the marriage course. It'll be the best time of their life from what it looks like. Alpha, the marriage prep course, the marriage course, the parenting courses, your connect groups, the cafe time, and there are many other things I know that revolve around food. And it's so good because Jesus loves to be with us at the table as a guest in our home. It's a sad fact, though, that today in Western society there are many homes without a table. There may be a semicircle around the TV, or even a different TV in every room, and people sitting at their own TV alone eating. We know a married couple with 2 young children in London who had no table to sit around as a family. And this young couple came on the parenting children course. And on the parenting courses, we talk about the importance of family mealtimes and all that children can learn, the values they imbibe, the social skills they develop as we eat and spend time together around the table. So after the course, that couple went straight to IKEA and bought a table. And I know you've got IKEA here in KL too. Which they told us sometime later was the best investment they ever made as a family. We have, Miles didn't ask us this, but we have 4 children, all grown up now, a daughter and 3 sons. And our middle son, Barney, is a bespoke furniture maker. Now, more than anything else, he designs and makes tables. And one day I asked him, Barney, why do you make so many tables? And he said, Mum, it's because that's where life really happens, around a table at mealtimes. And I love to make tables so that other people can experience that. When we invite Jesus into our lives and into our homes to join us at mealtimes, extraordinary things happen. I want to finish this point by telling you about a Christmas present that I got last year. And it was from our eldest son and daughter-in-law who live in New York. And it was a wonderful cookery book called The Yellow Table. And it was written by a friend of our son and daughter-in-law's who is a Christian. She'd grown up in a wonderful Christian home, very hospitable. And she explains that the yellow table in the title of the cookery book was the center of their family life. And I just want to read a short bit from her introduction to the book. Something magical happens when you gather people around a table to share a meal. They can be old friends or they can be strangers, but a transformation always occurs. Once phones are stowed away and conversation begins, people actually start seeing each other in a way that rarely happens in our overly distracted lives. They slow down enough to really listen, to be accepted for who we are, and to have a safe place to be ourselves. The table, for me, has always been that place. Cooking is deeply important to me, but it's community that I crave. I will happily throw together an impromptu dinner party if it gets people around the table. Pray, love, eat.
Last night at that wonderful home that we were invited to, at the meal, we were talking with a couple who became Christians in Singapore. And the husband was telling me how many people just started to come to their home in Singapore. And he said, some of them meeting Jesus in their home for the first time, inviting him into their lives. Some people being healed, some of those from depression, some from physical illness. He said when the pastor came to their home, the pastor came in and said, this home is full of angels and there are many chariots parked outside. There was one Indonesian woman who was a complete stranger to them, who turned up, who couldn't physically read the Bible because of evil spirits assailing her. And she was wonderfully set free, filled with joy, and she didn't want to leave their home. And he said this, so much happened while people were sitting around our table. And he said, when we moved back to KL, we couldn't bear to leave that table behind. And even though it's too big to fit into our apartment. Luke 24 says, when Jesus was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. And I can imagine for this couple in their home, whether from then on, whether it was just them, the two of them, their family, or as many people as they could fit in, every time they did this, every time they took bread, thanked God for it, broke it, gave it to each other, it would have reminded them of this day. They would have remembered Jesus explaining to them on the road the meaning of the cross, that his death was not a tragedy, but the greatest act of love in the history of the world, that he had died for them to set them free. And they would have remembered that Jesus is alive, that he had come to fill their lives and to fill their home with his light. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. As I said, I want to give people an opportunity to pray. And some of you, a bit like that couple on the road, you have felt just something in your hearts today. Maybe like your heart's burning within you, or just a desire rising up within you. And this is Jesus speaking to you. He loves you. He died for you. And he says he stands at the door of your life. He knocks. And he waits for you to open the door and to welcome him in. As we sit, may we pray.